Well, hello, folks. How you doing? It is Sunday, March 15th already. That's right, the 15th of March. We are flying through this year already. I'm telling you, this is pretty crazy when you think about it. I mean, it's 2026. You realize how much time has passed? 25 years since, 26 years into the new century. It's a lot. That is a lot, you know? I stop and I wonder sometimes because it doesn't feel like it's been a long time. And, I think about stuff that happened in the 90s. It's just, you know, or the 70s is just 30 years ago. No, it's much more than that. Hey, Ed, good to see you. But yeah, it's a sign of getting old, when time compresses. The time behind you compresses and the time in front of you compresses as well. Because, what was it? I saw a list. I think might have mentioned this once before. I saw a list of upcoming Super Bowls, and one of them was listed as taking place in 2030. And the idea of 2030, it sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel. It doesn't sound like something we'd be dealing with right now. Like, no, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 2030. It's pretty crazy. So, I don't really have a main topic for tonight. I've got some things on my mind. Um, I will tell you that this has just been a really trying week on my end. Uh, Ed says I can still remember the big Y2K panic and all of us IT guys laughing about how the media was overplaying it. Yeah, I was an IT guy at the time. I used to write RPG code, and I worked for small automotive a company that made software for the automotive aftermarket. So the Pep Boys and auto parts stores and stuff. We would write inventory code for them, and we had probably 62, 65 different customers. So we had to go through and make them all, 4-year compliant to deal with Y2K. And yeah, it was a lot. Oh, Ed, you were a RPG guy too, huh? Yeah, yeah. I used to work on the AS400. You know, learned my learned from my Robert Cozy book. So yeah, I did that for 13 years. From college, I actually learned it. I learned it on a whim. Um, I was dating a girl at the time who was Debbie, my first wife, um, and she was taking computer programming. It was actually COBOL at the time, and I had just gotten to college. I hadn't intended to go to college. I didn't know what I was doing, and just signed up. It was just series of weird things happened for me when it came to college. Um, she needed a ride to school one night and asked if she could, if I'd stay and take her home. It was only an hour class or whatever. And she's like, "There's a little food window thing. You can get something, have a seat." And I did, and I ran into somebody that I used to work with. He was one of my managers when I worked at KFC, and he had just picked up an application, and he picked up two because in case he made a mistake. And he had sat down, and I walked up. He's like, Dan? I'm like, yeah. So I ended up sitting and chatting with him. And as he was filling it out, he convinced me to fill out an application, the other application. And I ended up joining, it was a junior college. And once I got to the junior college, I just signed up for some basic, I didn't know, I thought maybe I'd be pre-law, law school was going to be my thing. And Deb had taken a COBOL course and convinced me just to take low-level beginning computer course. And I did. And I would go to the lab and I would do my lab assignment, same time Debbie did. And I would like finish mine and come sit next to her, and I'd catch spelling errors and stuff. And in COBOL, you use the word perform a lot. And you wouldn't believe how many times you would, type that wrong. Perfrom, pre-from, preform. Yeah. So I would just started watching and stuff. And the next semester came around and I needed a class. And so I said, to hell with it, I'll take COBOL. And I walked in the first night and I was watching the teacher write the thing out on the board. I was just lost. It was going, and he had it all written on the board and he's explaining it. And he comes down to the bottom. He goes, and then this circles back to here. And my mind went, and it all made sense. It just clicked. And that night, I went down to the lab. And by then, I'd actually made friends with some of the labby people. And I said, can I do the assignment already? And they're like, yeah, he's got all his assignments here. I said, oh, cool. So I ended up staying there. And a lot of times they kept the lab open overnight if they had somebody who would stay. And there was one weird guy there who was happy to stay at night. And I think it was like his house at that point. But so I would stay late and then I came back. And within like a week, I had done every single assignment and test he had. And the next Monday rolled around and I walked up and I said, hey, Doc. And I gave him everything. And he sat down, he looked at everything. He goes, okay, I'll see you for the final. And that's when, and I had started working at the college at the time. I was filling vending machines. Yeah, I was filling vending machines. And I had become kind of the joke. Like the teachers thought, yeah, this guy walked into class one week. And then the next week he had done every assignment. Well, the RPG teacher came up to me and he was very, very cocky. He says, you can't do that in my class. I said, is that because you don't have the stuff available? He goes, oh, no, you could go in and take it quickly. I went, oh, okay. He says, but you wouldn't be able to do that. RPG is much more difficult than Cobalt. And I signed up for his class the next semester and did the exact same thing. And I somehow found myself going from, yes, I'm going to be a lawyer, to I'm a computer geek. And yeah, I did that for 13 years. Let's see. Yep, was taught RPG and the AS400 until about 10 years ago. We dropped them. Yeah, I worked straight through on that until 2004, 2005. The company I was working for got bought out, and they gave me a nice severance package. And Debbie said, well, why don't you just write for a while and just, we'll be fine between my job and the severance package. I said, all right. And I did that for I don't know, 6 months. And then another former programmer I knew who had his own headhunting business had a contract he was looking for someone to fill and asked me if I'd be interested. And I'm like, Well, I mean, I could use a little money, and he told me the hourly rate at that point. I went, oh yeah, I can do that. So I worked another 6 months, and then after that, they asked me to stay, and I said no because I really wanted to spend time writing. And next thing I know, I haven't had a regular 9 to 5 job since 2006. So 20 years. Actually, it'll be 20 years in April. So about a month from now, it'll be 20 years since I've had a regular job, and my bank account knows it. By the way, when I tell these stories, these are not brags. These are not humble brags. I would call them cautionary tales. Don't do what I do. So, let's see. It says Mr. Nope bought a Raspberry Pi and is teaching himself Python. I signed up for a Python thing online and started getting into it, but I just, I get pulled in so many different directions. Um, I taught myself how to do like web pages and stuff like that, but you know, I when I worked before, I had a reputation. I was a firefighter, basically. When everything was going to hell, I would run in and work 24/7 to get it fixed. And I did that, like I said, for one point I was working for, we had 62 at the time, 62 different um, computer systems running out there. They're all based off the same model, but everything had its own variations, its own, modifications. So they were all separate. So you had to treat them separate. And I would be working on multiple systems, like, oh, at 8 o'clock, this guy called because he had a problem. And then at 9:30, this other guy called and he had a problem, and I was on call 24/7. And I did that for a few years, and it just kind of started killing my health. But, but yeah, I was the guy they would, call in the middle of the night, sudden, we need you out here. And suddenly I was on a plane. Um, but the problem was when there wasn't a fire. I am so bad at the mundane and boring and just, you know, oh, yes, we need to, just normal everyday work stuff is not my thing. I used to write so many scripts while just sitting around, because when you work as a team and everybody is like, you know, doing their parts of it, and then you have to wait for Bob to do his part, and then Dave can't do his until you're done. And so there's so much downtime and wait time. And then, and some people are really good at, okay, I have 3 weeks to do this job. I'm going to spread it out over the, I am wait until the last minute and do it fast. Yeah, I was a bad employee. But like I said, if something was on fire, I could get it fixed. So it says good old COBOL, the only programming language where it takes 2 pages of code just to write, hello, please input your name. That is very true. COBOL was the clunkiest code I've ever seen. Yep, I know Computer Geek. God, this is not what I meant to talk about. If I'm boring you guys, let me know. But I will tell one more story and then we'll move on. There was this girl in high school I really liked, and we continued hanging out on and off in college. But I liked her. She didn't like me that way. We were just kind of friends. And there was this other guy that she was kind of in a similar situation with. And the three of us were going to go out and see a movie. So I picked her up and we drove over to his place, and we get there and he's sitting on the floor surrounded by green park paper. And at that point, I didn't know what he was doing for a living. And I knew he was Australian. He was actually over from Australia. Well, it turns out he was a computer programmer for the Australian military. and he had a bug in their proprietary code. And like I said, they had their own code. It wasn't, COBOL. It wasn't. It had its own name. I don't want to say what that is, just in case. And he couldn't figure it out. So I sat down on the floor next to him and started looking at the code, and I went, and he told me a couple things. I went, okay, I think I've got this, and ended up spending most of the weekend at his place, helping him debug the software code. And what the program was for, it was for the guidance system, radar guidance systems on their airplanes. But yeah, and she just kept running back and forth doing food runs for us and stuff. We never did go see the movie, but yeah. So yeah, once I look at those different languages and stuff as how the computer works is how the computer works, and once you figure that out, it's just a matter of having the syntax. It's like the grammar of a language compared to what you're trying to say. Spanish, French, and Latin are all basically the same base language with their variations in their words. Once you know the basic structure of the language, you just need to know what the words is to say those things. 88 code. The name of the code was Javelin. I shouldn't say that. It was, like I said, their own proprietary code. So, all right, let's go ahead and move on in case I haven't run off anybody, and it's not just Ed and I chatting, because, Ed, I could just call you. It says, yep, once you have your algorithm figured out, you can pretty much code. Yep. Yeah, I think that's what clicked for me early on, and what made it work for me was the basics programming cycle, especially with RPG. I kind of figured out that nobody actually uses the RPG programming cycle. You basically create an infinite loop inside the programming cycle, and then you control everything inside the loop, and then you come out of the loop and you just finish. So you really only go through the programming cycle once, but everything you do is within that loop. And once I got that figured out, it's like, okay. But God, I haven't thought about programming in, like I said, years. But yeah, Y2K was fun. All right, we should talk comics. A couple things I've been thinking about. The Lanterns trailer keeps coming back into my mind. And the reaction to it. And I think people aren't getting it. I think the thing with the Lanterns trailer is how you see a cop show, and if it's a cop show that's based off of a city cop, like, jurisdiction, and then suddenly the FBI comes in and they butt heads and stuff, but you don't call the FBI in unless there's a certain type of case, Oh, it's a kidnapping. Well, we better bring the FBI in on this one. Oh, it's, there's a ransom. Oh, it's, it crosses state lines. Oh, we better bring in the FBI on this one. But they don't get involved in every single case. Well, do you think the Green Lanterns get involved in every single case? Do you think a murder in the Heartland, even if it's 14 people dead, that they're going to get involved unless there's a cosmic angle? Unless there's something galactic involved? There has to be something cosmic to get them there. And of course, they've been saying it's an ancient horror, but I think there's going to be more to it. There has to be something bigger or something more obvious. They're not going to come out and tell you it's an ancient horror in the first episode. What they're going to tell you is that somebody involved is more than just a regular human. Whether they're a Green Lantern, whether they're, somehow, oh, this is where the Manhunter thing happened, something with the Manhunters. There's going to be some element that's going to make the Guardians go, we should probably send one of ours. There's going to be something that brings it into their jurisdiction. So the idea that this is just going to be, True Detective with lanterns in it, there's right there going to be something that's going to bring them in. It's just, they're not just going to show up because, hey, we were driving through town and saw a bunch of body bags. Maybe we can help. Because I'm pretty sure the cops would go, what the hell are you? And why are you here? So I think people need to, again, kind of slow their roll on the trailer. And again, I still hear everybody is convinced that uniform in the closet is Hal Jordan's. And it might be. It could be. But it's also a pretty good chance that it's not his. Because we don't see who's going through the closet, and we don't see whose closet. We don't see anything that says that it's his closet. It's not like the first thing we see hanging there is a flight jacket with the name Jordan on it, and then we see the uniform. So, like I said last time, it could be Alan Scott's, it could be Guy Gardner's. Now, a couple interesting things has happened this week. One is we know that Aaron Pierre is now said to appear in Man of Tomorrow. So Jon Stewart from Lanterns is going to end up in the next Superman-ish movie. See, I can't. It's not supposed to be a sequel to Superman. That is what James Gunn is saying. But at the same time, it's a sequel to Superman. Good question. See, that's the thing. I think it was his. And I think that even if the car had crashed, he would have been able to summon the ring to him. But then again, are they changing the way the mythos in the comics? Because the mythos in the comics is the ring finds the user. So you would think that Jon Stewart already had a ring. Somebody gave him a ring. The idea that he doesn't have one seems weird to me. And I don't know what that's about, I mean, is Hal picking his successor? Is that what this story is about? Is that we're going to find out that at the end of this, Hal is giving his ring to John? I got mixed emotions about that, if that's true. Because as I've said before, I grew up with Hal as my Green Lantern. Other people grew up with Kyle Rayner, and they want him to be the guy. And Jon Stewart, that's who they want because they grew up on the Justice League animated show where he was prominent. You always want your version of a character. There are people who want Wally West and people who want Barry Allen. There's probably a few people that want Bart Allen. And some that want Jay Garrick. So when you have these characters like this, where they're all these, these legacy characters, you end up with that thing of, well, which one do we do? You don't get that question with Superman. You don't get that question with Batman. It's Clark Kent, Bruce Wayne. You get a little bit with Spider-Man because some people are like, I'd rather see Miles Morales. Um, you get that with Captain America because you never used to, and most people want Steve Rogers, but you got the Sam Wilson and you got the Bucky Barnes. So it's a weird thing, but you also have to remember that movies are, even though they're bigger and more people see them, they're smaller. Uh, you know, Green Lantern's been around forever. The original one in the 40s, and then the rebirth of him with Hal. Um, I mean, the 60s. These characters have been. We've been getting stories of these characters for longer than we've been alive for most of us. There's always been a Hal Jordan. There's always, yeah, they've killed him off in the comics or whatever. He became Parallax, but I just mean that there's always been a Green Lantern. I'm not sure how many people around nowadays have lived at a time where there wasn't a Green Lantern. Now, did they know about it? That's another story. But so yeah, so they have to decide, and they're not going to be able to do all these different stories. And after, and a universe has a finite life cycle, then you have to reboot it. Marvel's seeing that now. Their Captain America and Iron Man and all these characters are fading out, and they're not having the stars to carry it forward. But, DC is just getting started. If they get 10, 20 years out of this round, then that's good. So how many Green Lantern stories are you going to be able to tell in that period of time? Is there enough for you to tell all of their stories, to focus on Guy and Kyle and Hal and John and Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz and all just the fact that we are going towards a second movie. We're 1 year from where this really begins, and we've got 3 Green Lanterns. Well, no, we got 3 Earthbound Green Lanterns. We know Chip exists too, because he's a squirrel. So, yeah, it's just, I think they're doing a remarkable job, because we're getting Hal, we're getting John, we're getting Guy. And can we get the other ones later? Maybe. But at some point, they're like, look, we've got to tell the story. We can't just keep, hey, Thomas, we can't just keep changing and changing and changing. So the fact that they found a way to introduce all of these characters so far, and all 3 of them are going to be in Lanterns. Now, from what I understand, Nathan Fillion has said that he swore more as Guy Gardner in the Lantern series than he's sworn in every other role of his combined in his career. But also, he said that he only ever had scenes with Aaron Pierre or John Stewart. So that's something to think about, that maybe he was training John Stewart, and then something happened to John or to Guy, and that's why Hal is brought in to finish the training, but also to investigate what happened to Guy. Maybe that's what happened. I mean, there's a lot there to figure out. And then we hear that John Stewart's going to be in Man of Tomorrow, but we don't know if Nathan Fillion's coming back for that. So maybe the death they're following up on is Guy's, So So yeah, it's a lot of people are trying to read a lot into that trailer, but they're trying to be definitive about it. And it's not. It's wide open. There's a bunch of things that could be happening, and it's hard to say. So instead of trying to get our hopes up or lock in on what we think it should be, we should just kind of wait and enjoy it in August, you know? So yeah, I knew somebody was going to mention that. Ed brings up the Firefly news, and if you've seen, Nathan Fillion did a bunch of teasers with the cast members of Firefly about doing something together again. And they said it wasn't going to be a convention or a podcast or anything like that. Now, I know a lot of people got their hopes up for like a new series, like continuing the show going forward. And that would be difficult because the characters are much older. I mean, that was a show from the 90s. Was it 90s? Yeah, pretty sure it was the 90s. And then also, Book is no longer with us. Ron Glass passed away. And Alan Tudyk, who is kind of the hinge pin of a lot of this stuff, along with Nathan, his character's dead. And I think there's some other characters that are dead too. So it seemed kind of weird that they would do that. Well, the announcement was made today that they're going to do an animated series that takes place between the TV show and the movie, which I think is great because they could they could leave Serenity as the ending and they can grow on everything in between. And the voice actors they can still voice their characters, but look like they should without, a huge budget. There's a reason why Marvel doesn't just de-age everybody for all the movies, Robert Downey Jr. looks 10 years older in Avengers Endgame than when he was in Iron Man, but it's more than 10 years, or it's not as supposed to be 10 years in comic book time. Oh, Firefly was 2022 or 2002. Okay. Could have sworn it was. That doesn't sit right with me in my head. I don't know why, but that doesn't sit right. Not saying you're wrong. I have mixed memories, but anyway. So yeah, that's what it is. That they're going to do an animated series. They'll have to get someone to do the voice of Book, which, treat the character with respect and it's good to go. But then Alan Tudyk can be back. All the characters can be back. So that's cool. I like that. But so yeah, I'm looking for it. I know people were disappointed. They wanted live action, but and it's not 100% at this point. They've committed to doing it, but I don't know if it has a home yet or how they're moving forward. I haven't had a chance to really dig into it, but it sounds like they need a big fan reaction to the idea to make it happen. So hopefully that'll work out. Like I said, because I think animation is becoming more acceptable when you have things like the Predator movie or animation, and you have Critical Role and Tomb Raider, that they're doing these animated series. Oh, you didn't realize that was oh, okay. Um, yeah, that's so. I think an animated thing is a better option, and there's a lot of shows I think that if they wanted to come back, animation is a better venue because you know instead of trying to dust off these characters, you can just tell more adventures. Yeah. Yes, this is also Mal and Castle and The Rookie, and he was on Two Guys, a Girl, at a Pizza Place with Ryan Reynolds. Picked that up cheap this week, so he's on my desk. Um, but yeah, excited for Firefly. I'm very excited for Lanterns. Um, I'm really curious what Man of Steel is, or Man of Tomorrow is going to be, because there's a lot of characters in it. So that means the bad guy has to be really a threat. That's going to be interesting. So yeah. All right. Let's do a little bit more. I may have to cut out a little bit early because it turns out it's my night to make dinner. Normally, Lisa makes dinner on Sundays so that uh, I can do the show. But I wasn't feeling well early in the week and flip flopped some of the dinner things that we had planned, which left the spaghetti for tonight. And I'm the one that makes the spaghetti. Yep. It's a lovely Italian sausage spaghetti. So I have to get cooking on that. I can't go too long. So do a few more minutes though. So if you have any questions you want to ask, now's a good time. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to cover while we got the show going. By the way, please hit the thumbs up. Would be appreciated. Ed says, hey, Kat, good to see you. With all the big movies coming out this year, any thoughts as to which ones will get the biggest bank? Oh. I know there's a couple animated movies coming out that'll probably do well. There's this little thing coming out in December, I think it is, called Avengers Doomsday. That's probably going to do pretty well. I think Supergirl will do decent. I think people are excited by Superman and they know it's a continuation, but it's not as popular as Supergirl. So I think you'll probably end up with a similar budget or a similar take for Supergirl. I don't know how well Mandalorian and Grogu will do because, yeah, Mando and Baby Yoda are extremely popular, but they're extremely popular on TV. Can a TV show jump to big budget? I don't know. We haven't had a Star Wars movie in a long time. And I'll also tell you that I think the Mandalorian and Grogu movie is a horrible name for, or a horrible title for a movie. I think it could have had some better name. You know, they never did. I mean, okay, Solo is the only one that had Andor. Yeah, Andor was a TV show. It should have had another name, you know, but they didn't. And I just think that's a tough one. Let's see, it says, I think Spider-Man will take 2026 because a lot of Doom's take will come in 2027, but not. Okay, fair point. You may be 100% right there. See, my problem with Mortal Kombat is that the first one was released during the pandemic and went straight to HBO. So it didn't have a theatrical release. And it was basically a prequel that got mixed reaction. Yeah, they just named it The Mandalorian and Grogu, yeah. So I think the problem with the Mortal Kombat movie is a lot of people probably don't know it's a sequel. They don't know that there's another one already on HBO Max right now. You know, they and they're not doing anything to hype it, because how cool would it be to go, yes, here we have this brand new movie coming out, and but you can go over here and watch it. Watch the prequel to it, you know, and since a lot of people don't know that it exists, and like I said, some of the scenes in the Mortal Kombat movie the were great. The fight scenes, the whole thing with Sub-Zero, terrific. But the stuff with the new character, I still don't get why they're trying to push a new character. I mean, I do and I don't. I understand that in a game system like this, everybody has their favorite character. And if your favorite character doesn't get the hero spotlight, then you're going to be somewhat offended. It's not going to be the movie for you. But if they make all the characters equal and make the hero spotlight on a new character, nobody is getting their favorite highlighted. So I get that. Ed says they had me when they announced Carl Urban. I agree. Carl Urban looks awesome. That trailer brings it home for me. So, yeah. All right. So, any questions for you guys? Like I said, I'm probably going to shut down just a little bit early so I can get dinner on the stove like I promised. But I will try to be back next week and do a full show. Trying to think if there's anything else coming out. Have you guys been checking out the new stuff Top Cow's doing? For those of you that buy comics, what they're doing with Witchblade and the Darkness over at Top Cow. I got friends over there, and I will admit that. Matt Hawkins, the president of Top Cow, is a D&D buddy of mine, and I've worked with him and worked for him. So I'm a little biased, but I've read a couple of the volumes of the Witchblade. I've been following the Darkness, and they're doing some really good stuff there. You know, they're taking these characters that were introduced back in the 90s and stuff, and they're getting them back out there. They're relaunching them, and they're worth reading. They're definitely worth reading, worth giving a shot to. So let's see. Why did you call the episode Guy Gardner's hair? I rewatched Superman last night, Ed. What I was trying to say earlier is that this hasn't been a great week for me. I've been just dealing with a lot of bureaucratic crap, and I needed kind of a comfort food movie, so I rewatched Superman last night. And the scene in the Hall of Justice between Lois and Guy Gardner just makes me happy. You know, his line about he doesn't trust everybody. He just does because we're of the cloth, of the cloth. And stuff like that is just such a great scene. And then when she goes off about his haircut, how that should be against his oath. And I was thinking at that point, you know what? I get it. I get that's the haircut from the comics. We've seen it now. Let's move on. It's hard to take that character seriously with that haircut. I don't know how he's going to look in Lanterns if he still has that bowl cut. But the other thing in that scene that just blows my mind is when he says 348, was it babes or women, would disagree. That's a real specific number. You know, and it's like, and it's an odd number too. It's just why? It's very large if you're thinking the number of women he's hooked up with. But if you're thinking of, and this is probably more Guy, the number of women who have sent him fan mail. He probably is counting the number of fan letters he gets from women saying he's handsome. That is very Guy Gardner. And just that line is put in there. And that's the thing, is there's so many lines in that movie that are just perfect. You know, they're you don't expect them. You stop, you wonder, why would you say that? But it's perfect. It is so in character. So, oh, that was the other thing I wanted to talk about. But so yeah, I agree that Guy Gardner's hair really, we've seen it. He's done it. Let's give him a regular haircut now, or maybe just a flat top or something, because he's had a flat top in the comics too. It's the bowl cut has had its time. So yeah, the last thing I wanted to say says, "Oh, I love how Guy was giving away secrets." Yeah, he's such a bad character, but bad in the best way, you know. So, has anybody else noticed that Zack Snyder, and I think I mentioned this last week, but he's still doing it, has become the ex-boyfriend that won't give up? He's still, the guy that, you break up with, but he's still posting pictures of you on Facebook together, stuff like that. Because Zach is still going out to social media and posting behind the scenes photos from Justice League and all that stuff. And I realize there's an anniversary coming up. But it seems like most directors and writers and stuff would be focused on their new projects, their next project. And he seems very focused on a property he's not involved with anymore, and it's like he wants those fans to stay dedicated to him. Yeah, that's right, Ed. That's perfect. His status on Facebook could still be in relationship with DC. Yes. So yeah, he needs to let go, and he's supposed to be friends with James Gunn. They're supposed to actually be friends. So why don't you just kind of let it move on and let your friend have his turn, you know? Because, like most ex-girlfriends, or, I think DC needs to put out a Taylor Swift message and tell him we're never, ever getting back together. He needs to move on. And I think Snyder fans just need to shake it off. Time to get on board with the new DCU, because that's all there is. I mean, you either enjoy this stuff or don't. But there's not going to be a third option. If it doesn't work, they're probably going to put it away for a while. Or they'll start completely over, and then you'll get, like 5 years down the line, you'll get a Batman movie. So either eat well now or try the food now, or you're just going to go away. So. All right, folks, I've made Ed spit a soda pop out of his nose. My work here is done. I have succeeded in my night's quest. I have appreciated you all joining me this evening. I need to go put some Italian sausage on the stove to make spaghetti. I will be back next Sunday. Again, if you guys have any topics you want me to cover, please let me know. I'm hoping to get into Young Sherlock this week if I can, or start watching Young Sherlock, stuff like that. But I will see what the topic's going to be. No worries. Kate, Cat. No worries, Cat. What was it Ed said? Any more news on Paramount versus Netflix? Yeah, it's still a little bit up in the air because of the conflict going on over in Iran right now, because a lot of the Middle Eastern backers are starting to think about pulling out of different American-based investments, and one of them is because most of Paramount's money is being backed by foreign investors. So we'll have to see if it ends up moving forward or not. So, all right, guys, I will see you next week. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great week. We'll talk soon.